All right. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Startup Conversations on CG Connect. I'm your host, Roderick Bates, and today we have a startup that honestly has a fantastic story. And the prep call for this one, we almost went too long. We're here with ArchiBoost and with Georgios from that. So, what I would love it is if we get a brief introduction on yourself. Um, and your company, and then we can start getting into some questions. And honestly, from my perspective, I want to start digging into some of the topics we raised in our earlier call, which I've been noodling on ever since. So I'm really excited about this one.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for having me, Roderick. I'm Georgios. I'm an architect by training. Spent most of my career practicing architecture before getting into startups. So today I'm the co-founder of ArchiBoost AI, and where we're building AI tools for architects, engineers, contractors, and developers. And the basic idea is to give the AEC professional superpowers, not by replacing their judgments or creativity, but by taking a lot of their repetitive, high-stakes work around code, zoning, documentation, coordination, and of course QA/QC. So I can tell you a little bit about my background in general before ArchiBoost and how I got here.
I think the background's always interesting. Um,
Yeah.
People
Okay.
always want to know how someone gets to be into this type of position, where the expertise come from that to inform a startup. So, where did how did you start in the industry, and what led you to actually founding a startup? And actually, it's probably worth noting, not your first startup, as a matter of
Not
fact.
the first one. Yes. I'm quite old. So I'm originally
I
from
don't know about
Greece.
that. Let's.
So I did my undergrad and first master's in architectural engineering in Greece, where I'm from. Spent the next 3 years working as an architect in the country, became licensed there. Did a lot of different projects from museums and single family homes all the way to K-12 school. I was actually nominated for the Mi
All
Vanderbilt
at the
Award
same
in Europe.
firm, or
Same firm, yes. And that
that's a
firm,
wow. I love those kind of diversified portfolios.
it's one of these boutique, really design-oriented firms. They're called Spark Architects. At the time, they were the most prominent architecture
Mhm.
firm in Greece. But the size was 20 people, because that's how big those firms get, right? Um, and then I moved to the States. I came here to do my Master's of Architecture at UC Berkeley, where I did something completely different. I did a lot of research on digital manufacturing, digital fabrication, 3D printing, a lot of KUKA robots, computational design. Wrote a couple of papers with my professor there, and then I decided to go back to traditional architecture. So I joined SOM, worked there for mostly competitions in early stages of the design process,
The fun
schematic.
part, as it
Yes,
were.
yes. The fun, but also the really time consuming, right? Where you
Mhm.
do 100 hours a week.
For sure, and
um,
it's all high risk, right? I mean, a lot of times you're not getting paid, so you you really hope your hit rate's high.
yeah. So, I mean, it was a great experience. SOM is amazing. Everybody knows about them. A
Mhm.
great school. And then I wanted to go and be the PA of the projects, understand the whole process from the start all the way to delivering the project to the client, right? Um, so I joined WRNS Studio, and I led and worked on multiple projects from higher education buildings for Stanford University and the Maritime Academy in Vallejo, all the way to TIs and office buildings for big tech clients like Google and Amazon. And the last one, just before I left, was a 40-story multifamily residential tower in Hawaii.
What's remarkable here is that you've worked. I wouldn't say that at WRNS is small, but it's not the behemoth necessarily that SOM has. So you've actually
Mm-hmm.
worked for almost the full scale of architectural firms in a lot of ways.
I tried everything from the boutique firm to the medium size to the global, huge firm. Yeah,
Wow, talk about a perspective to have going into the world of startups. So, from those three firms that you worked at, did you start to see commonalities of challenges they're facing that started to inform your thinking about what you might want to do when it comes to providing a startup solution, if you will?
absolutely. Yes. So, I mean, the common denominator in all of these companies was the tedious and repetitive tasks, the thing that we would have to manually do again and again. And a lot of the times, those things you don't have to not think, because design is a great process, right? But then when you have to go and do the modeling, or you have to go and do the documentation, you have to have the expertise to do that. But a lot of these, like dimensioning drawings, plans, there's an art to it, but it is tedious and repetitive, right?
Hmm.
Or doing the
And it
markups
has
and
to be done right. Like you say, that's part of the art, I
absolutely,
suppose.
yeah, it's a high stakes environment, right? But those are things that you have to do again and again, and there's definitely a way to make those faster and more efficient.
So I've heard that a lot about people talking about AI and technology and like, oh, you want to automate the boring stuff so you can focus on the design and things like that. But what I find interesting is that figuring out what the boring stuff is for automation is not so easy. And so maybe we can go about how do you figure out, because it sounds like a lot of what ArchiBoost does is actually
Hmm.
automate some of those tedious tasks. And I'm
Right.
curious on how you figured out what those tedious tasks were that were appropriate for automation.
Well, we figured it out with a really expensive failure first. So after WRNS, I co-founded a company called Pantheon AI with two friends, David and Tiger. We raised 25 million from Andreessen, HBC, and Felicis. And the premise there was that we would be the first AI native architecture firm in the world. So that part was not
And the
trying to
25
automate.
million puts you in a pretty rare club in the world of funded AEC startups. I mean, it's
Right.
got to be like, one of the top 5 or top 3, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm not keeping track, but probably.
It's
So
pretty
yeah,
cool.
we start the firm, and the idea is that we're selling the architectural services to the real estate developers, right? So we put together how I call the Avengers,
Mhm.
top architects, top engineers, um, and we build a team of 12 people within 8 months, and we build a product that helps you do really quick iterations of your design, generate design. At the
And
same
what and at
time,
what LOD are we talking about here? Like early design, or is this something that would have taken you all the way through to documentation?
it's everything. So it included construction details, materials, manufacturers, code compliance. Everything we were generating was had FLS plans, fire life safety, egress. Everything is in there, and we do that in 3 days instead of I don't know how many months it would probably take. We started with small TIs, right?
Mhm.
Um, so we start doing demos to real estate developers, all the big names, and everyone is super excited. They
Yeah,
love
I'm
it.
excited. I mean, it sounds awesome, except I'm not a practicing architect or not practicing in an architecture firm anymore. So,
Yeah. So we get to the point where we work with them live at the demo, and they say, "Oh, what if we were to move this conference room here?" And we move it, and everything gets rearranged, and you get the perfect documentation for it, and everything's ready, right? Um, so everyone's excited. We move up the ladder. We go to the decision makers of those firms, and the questions start pouring in. Have you built anything before? And the answer is yes. I've built a lot of buildings in the U.S. No, 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 not Georgios. Has Pantheon built anything before? And the answer, of course, is no, because we're a super new. We are a baby. We're a startup, right?
yeah.
And that's where it hit me that when you're selling the services to a real estate developer as an architecture firm, you don't really sell the design. You sell the trust that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, they're going to have a building or a project built right there, standing, right?
Yeah, and this is oftentimes why I say maybe a small firm that doesn't have that trust will partner with a larger firm. So they'll
Mm-hmm.
become the design architect, and then you have the architect of record or something like
Right.
that.
Well, for us, it was a little different because of all the money we raised, we needed to build our own brand name. So it
And
was
there
a little
wasn't time to
tricky.
start small. You couldn't start with ADUs and slowly graduate to high rises, if you will.
No, because when you raise that money and you have these crazy valuations, you have to really justify that with the relevant revenue, and you have to do
So is there a
taxes.
lot
You
of
have to.
pressure with that? What does that timeline look like? And I think for a lot of us that have never been on the inside of a firm that's received that kind of funding, what sort of pressure comes with that type of check?
Well, the rough numbers is you have to be the $1 billion company in 7 years. Um, so you understand that the
That's
sales
big. Yeah.
cycles, yeah, that's it. Like how many projects can you build in 7 years to be able to hit that kind of revenue to have that kind of valuation, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we quickly realized that this is not going to scale at the pace we wanted it to be to scale. Um, we had a talk with my co-founders. I wanted to pivot to software because at the end of the day, I thought that this is how we could scale fast. My co-founders were mostly excited about the service aspect of the company. So that's when we take the really bold decision that okay, this is not working. We're going to shut down the company and return the money back to the investors.
So what
And
happens to the tech for something like that? I mean, that this is almost like developing Fusion and then being like, ah, we're just going to put it back on the shelf. I mean, this is pretty remarkable technology when you think about the implications for the industry.
where it went to on the shelf, I think one of the investors had the IP, and I think it got sold to another startup that is not really using it. If that's what I hear, so it's
Wow.
more like, oh, let's understand what they built.
Yeah. I mean,
So
that's
yeah,
pretty
we
remarkable, though, because you think about what the industry has been talking about, and you do feel like in a lot of ways we're now taking sort of a MCP layer coupled with a frontier model, baby steps towards that outcome, and yet you were already there back
Yeah,
then.
I mean, we were there for TIs. I wouldn't say we were able to do that for hospitals and hotels and data centers, right? It wasn't adaptable to every single occupancy or construction type. It was tailored for TIs at that moment. The plan was to expand to all the other different typologies, of course.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Oh,
so
very
yeah,
cool, though.
that was 12 months. January 24, December 24. So we shut down
Must have been
December
quite a
24.
12 months.
It was crazy, but it was amazing. It was probably it was like a university course. I call it the startup 101 on steroids because I didn't know anything about startups before that. I remember when we got the money from Andreessen, David, who was the CEO, he told me, "Do you know who this investor is?" And I'm like, "I have no idea," because I didn't know anything about investors at the time, right? Um, so we shut down the company December 24. We returned
Hmm.
95% of the money back to the investors. They were shocked because no one returns money in the valley. Um,
Yeah, instead you hear stories about people having like tequila bars installed in the office. So this is very different.
no, no, no.
It
We were
certainly
super.
generates some trust, I imagine, for next time around.
It did. And once we shut down the company, I took 3 months to understand what happened, evaluate the situation, plan the next step because I knew I wanted to turn this into a software company. Um, and the moment I opened my next role on LinkedIn, I'm like startup, stealth mode, CEO. I was inundated by investor messages, just
No kidding.
because yeah, the word went out and everybody knew that we are reliable, and if this doesn't work, we will return the money, right?
So this is the
Um,
challenge of people always like, well, what do I need to do to like, get a startup or get funding and things like that? And all I need to do is they tell them to start at a small boutique architecture firm, then go to Cal, get a degree there, go work for the largest architecture firm in the world, and then work at a good, really well reputed mid-sized firm, and then get a startup with seed funding of 25 million. And now
I think
you're already,
the last part was the most important one, because that found me by pure luck. Like David was the CEO of the company. He's a friend of a friend. He was looking for a domain expert. That's how I joined them. I kind of joke sometimes and I say I didn't choose startup life. It chose me.
yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely. Well, you
I
made
was
the most of it though when it struck. You say 12 months of just holding on and making it work.
Yeah, no, everything I do in my life, I give 100% of it. So I don't like to half-ass things. I'm either 0 or 100%.
Yeah, I
Um,
understand that. You have two speeds.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the plan for me was, so my wife is also an architect. The plan was to open our boutique firm and kind of where we started because we worked together at that architecture firm in Greece.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not going to happen. um, so
So is she still a colleague, or does she work in architecture now at a
she's
different?
she's an architect. She actually just switched to tech. If that's tech, because she's basically an architect for Meta right now.
Hmm.
Um, so she's creating the design standards for them
Oh, very nice.
for their
All right, so
spaces.
let's get into ArchiBoost here. This is a great backstory. You're thinking, okay, all of this has led you to where you are now. So you're just like, okay, now I want to do startup, not a firm that
Hmm.
has a technology underpinning, but rather you actually want to have startup that sells software or software that
Right.
you can sell.
Hmm.
And so, how did that lead to you had an idea, you're in stealth mode. Did you know what you wanted the product to be?
Yeah, so a big part of when we're generating the design at Pantheon was how do you put together the documentation? How do you answer um, those questions that you don't have enough data? Because I think one of the biggest problems of the industry is that in every phase that we are, we make educated guesses. So you are in schematic design and you're like, okay, let's design it this way, and later we'll figure out what's happening. And there's a lot of buckets of data, right? You have the client standards, you have the code, you have zoning, like you have state code, you have the international code, you have the municipal code and local ordinances. Then you have information coming from institutional knowledge from the actual firm, because that's how we do things at SOM or
Mhm.
that's how we do things at WRNS. Um, there's a lot of information, and I don't think that people have access to it at the right time so they can make informed decision while they design and document their buildings. So that stayed with me, and when I started the company, ArchiBoost with Vasu, who is my co-founder, um, it was pretty clear that we had to go after the tedious and repetitive task and not the design. How did we learn about that? We sat down and we did 103 interviews before we wrote a single line of code.
Now,
Something that we
these
didn't do at Pantheon.
interviews, yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I was asking, it's like, okay, how do you figure out what obviously you knew from your experience what's tedious,
Mhm.
but it always helps to reinforce that. So when you said 103 interviews, um, that's a pretty remarkable number to throw out. So let's break it down. Like, how many different firms was it? Was it a firms of different size? Did it include international firms? What type of a picture do you feel, or did you feel was necessary to really understand how to shape your product?
So we wanted to do four categories. So we did architects, engineers, contractors, and developers. And then we scaled all of that based on locality. So we did US companies, we did Asian companies, we did companies in Europe. And at the same time, we did different sizes. So we
Mhm.
did boutique firms, medium-sized firms, international firms. And that's how we picked the people. And at the same time, of course, the people who we talked were my connections. So at my age, most people are either senior associates, principals, directors. So I was able to get to the decision makers and understand how they do that. But also, we started talking to more junior people to understand what's their pain point right now. So we also wanted to scale across the same firm, different
Mhm.
age groups and different levels of experience.
So does that 103 include all of those categories, or is that 103 subjects, and then there's multiple engagements? What did that look like as you broke it down?
It was multiple engagements. So I would say it was 103 contacts, not interviews. There were more interviews
Okay,
because
so that's
with
yeah.
some of them,
Wow. Okay,
with
that
some of
makes
them we
sense.
met twice or three times. Um, I don't have the exact number of firms to be honest, uh, but there were a lot. I
But I think
think
103 contacts starts to put that in context, right? If people are saying, "Oh, how do I get a good sense of the industry?" That's not just a handful of conversations. That's a lot of conversations, and it really speaks to the diversity of ways in which people think about design and architecture. But you were able to distill that down into one product that you saw as actually functioning across all of those different types that you engage with, all those different personas.
right, yes, and that's the idea that we build a platform that allows all the different stakeholders throughout the life cycle of the project, and no matter the experience level, to use that every day. So it doesn't mean that a junior who is looking for a zoning answer will use this every day, but they will use some aspect of the platform every day. And I can go deeper into the product, but let me tell you how we started. So we do the interviews, we understand what we're looking for, and after that, we go back and we contact basically WRNS because that's
Mhm.
my alma mater. That's where I spent 6 years of my career here. So we go back and we talk to the director of technology, Jason, who's a friend, and we're asking them, what do you also want us to build for you? And at the time, it was kind of funny because one of the partners who I worked with and who was the code expert at the company, Russell Sermon, he just retired. So Jason tell us, can you build something that would replace Russ? Because in the office, everybody would either chat with Russ on the channel on Zoom, or they would go to his desk and say, "Hey, we have this problem. Can you tell us what to do? What's the rule here? Can we do horizontal exits?"
And
So
Russ knew everything.
Russ knew everything, everything. He's the person who's the code expert, and if he's not on his computer marking up drawings and giving you answers, he's on the phone shouting to a general contractor, right? So he's this kind of
Oh, that's
this kind of
perfect.
person. Yeah. So um, actually, we go back to Russ and we start talking to him, the actual Russ, and we put together the first agent that is a code agent. And at the time, we only supported California 2022. Um, and we give him a peek at the first version of the tool, and he tells it is garbage. Why is that? And Rush is really, really, really blunt. He doesn't sugarcoat things. Because he tells us that, well, this is great. You can retrieve the code. If I ask you, give me the code section of 504.4, sure, you got it. But that's not the problem here with the code. The problem is, can you give me enough information so that I can use my expertise to find a compliance path and a solution to my problem? Retrieving the code is the easy part. Not ChatGPT can do that. Well, kind of. But that wasn't the real problem, right? So we go back and we started doing, based on his feedback, some adjustments. And then I think a month later, we go back and we have a version 2, which now can answer and give you compliance paths. An example,
Oh,
WRNS.
interesting. So when you do these compliance paths, it's actually recommending. So we had a startup conversation last time around, and they were
Mhm,
talking about how, like, in a lot of ways, it's best that compliance does sort of a binary. It's like, yeah, pass or not.
mhm.
And that the compliance piece, the kind of the Rust piece, is actually one that they would push back on the individual. And I'm curious here, you're saying, in fact, actually, you can use AI to be that analysis and find that negotiation within the context of the code.
That's what we've achieved, and that's how we're different than anyone else. I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
So
I'd say it's pretty
WRNS,
different.
yeah, no, WRNS has worked on design and built the Silicon Valley campus for Microsoft, right?
Hmm.
And I think the whole process from design to deliver was 8 years. It was a whole campus. So one of the big elements there was that they had to figure out how to get unlimited areas. And the trick that they pulled with the help of a code consultant was that they named the campus as an open mall. And instead of housing retail, they house office. The code doesn't say anywhere that you
So
cannot do
people
that.
are still building malls. Look at that. In case everyone, the demise of malls is greatly exaggerated. That's funny.
So we sat down with Russ, and after we build version 2, we say, okay, go and ask the same question to Russ, the AI agent, and tell him, give me 3 compliance paths and how can I achieve this? And he goes and asks the question. The first out of the 3 compliance paths is you can actually do the open mall and you can play the game of the housing, the retail, sorry, office instead of retailing there. And that's where the actual was like, okay, this is not working.
Ah, I can't wait for you to build the New York version because I think there they make the negotiation an art form.
Well, we
That's
have in New York.
yeah, you do have a New York version.
We do. So the
Is it
first
still
version
named
was
Russ? That's the question. I feel like you need to come up with something a little more
it's
adversarial sounding.
it's still Russ, but we can tailor the name to it, the company we work with. I actually had this conversation with a couple of clients, and they told us, like, joking, can you rename this to Kevin, who's a code
Oh,
expert?
absolutely. Well, we had an individual like this called Chris McNeil at the firm that I worked for, and he was
Hmm.
absolutely. It's funny. I don't guess it's a thing. Every firm
It is
has
a thing.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a thing. And I was kind of a code expert at my level, the PA level, but I wasn't Russ, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that, we get the green lights from Russ. It's working. We go there, we start evolving. We're adding every single state in the US, so we have all 50 states now.
Now,
And then
what
the
is that?
second,
When you add a state, what does that process look like for this?
so we have to go and make sure that we understand the code. And then, of course, I mean, it's kind of a secret sauce, but Vasu, who is our
Now, just tell me
CTO,
the
is
ingredients. I won't ask for the exact methodology. I'm just curious though, because it seems like such a formidable challenge. Because some of these things it's not always digitized. At least that's what I've heard.
Hmm.
Some things it is digitized. Sometimes it's based off of things that maybe have been approved in the past, so you get a sense of what the negotiation pathways might be. Like it sounds messy, is all I'm saying.
It is really messy, but luckily every municipality has its own um, website with information there.
Hmm.
So New York City, you mentioned that they have all the code there. So we have New York City resolution code. We have all the codes that they're using. So and we were able to find all the information for back to 1938. So now we support 1938, 1968, 2008, and 2022 for New York
Wow,
City.
that's remarkable. And is that ingestion process one in which so that's part of your IP stack is actually how you ingest that data. It's not just
Yes,
sort
and
of a scrape. It's there's more to it than that.
we don't scrape. We
Yeah.
don't scrape the data. I'm we don't ingest the data. Uh, Vasu has built a system that is basically a perfect way to search online and find the answer.
And are you doing that? Oh, interesting. So you aren't pulling the data and then processing. You're actually you're making that an active analysis and querying the data from these various
Correct.
endpoints in real time. Okay.
And in a way that is reliable and it's not looking at some blogs that someone posted something,
Yeah.
right? But we're in talks with the ICC right now, and we'll probably work with them moving forward. But so far, it's been super accurate because we've done some benchmarking, and the average horizontal model, the ChatGPTs and the Geminis, they score 40 to 45% accuracy on the codes. And I'm not talking just the building code. I'm talking building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, even like the ADAs and the Fair Housing Acts.
Hmm.
And then there are competitors that I'm not going to name them, but you know them, and they have AI chatbots and they score 62% accuracy. How do we know that? We paid a code consultant. They created 2,000 questions based on different code versions, years, code cycles, states, international codes, municipal codes. And then we took those 2,000 questions and we fed them to the horizontal models, but also to our competitors because we bought subscriptions with them. And this guy scored 2%, and we are at 98% accuracy. And the
Yeah,
code
that was an
consultant,
interesting model for QA. I really liked that as a methodology. It's like you're putting it really through the ringer. Are you doing that in the context of a project? So you were say actually have an architectural project and you're running this type of code review on it
uh,
with all these various tools, or how are you? What's that QA process look like?
so for the code the code analysis and the
Hmm.
code chatbot that we have, we just use the questions. For the QA/QC that I'm going to talk later, we have a different open source model that we used for that.
Okay, so you
Open
came
source
up with a
benchmark.
boat of code questions, and you ran through a series of questions, and then you had the actual human expert that would also review the responses and say, yeah, it's missing the
And the
mark,
way
or
we
yeah, that's
and,
pretty good.
and the way we did is that we anonymized the results. So we said we'll give you six different buckets of questions and answers. I mean, the questions were the same, but six different buckets of answers,
Hmm.
and you will tell us which one did best, and then we will tie back the name and we'll tell you who did what.
So
And that's how
that's
we came up with the score.
I like that, and I think it's a good sense of the type of rigor that goes into it, and the transparency that needs to go into that type of QA process. But what's fascinating to me is that that's one of the tedious things that you found, right? Was this idea of code compliance and code review. But there's others, obviously, because what I find kind of neat about ArchiBoost is it's not like for me, I'm coming from chaos where we do visualization, right? And we're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
we're one channel, we're really deep. But it sounded like from your conversations, in fact, you found that your channel is these tedious tasks that you want to automate, and that ends up being not to sound pejorative in any way, but it's a little more of a diversified grab bag. Like where tedium resides in the design process is in different places, and
Right.
so you have a software that doesn't just do code; it's doing other things.
Yeah. So code was just a starting point, right? Once
Hmm.
architects started using it, they began asking us for other things. Can you do the same thing with zoning? Can I ask questions against our firm standards and the client guidelines? Then they came and said, we have hundreds of thousands of details, construction details from previous projects. Can you help us actually find and understand them? And eventually, as you have all this information, if you understand all of this, can you review my drawings? So the product evolved very organically from what customers were asking to solve. So today we at ArchiBoost we think of the platform in two ways. The first bucket is helping firms while they're making decisions. So you're designing a building and you have access to the building code, zoning, the company standards, the client requirements, historic project knowledge, construction details. Everything is you can pull. You can put it in Revit if you want the details, for example.
Hmm.
Um, Again, one of our clients right now, they're doing a design build project for a student housing, and they just uploaded 4,000 pages of client guidelines for spec guidelines, RFPs, RFIs, addenda.
Yeah.
Instead of them going in Control F, hundreds of documents and thousands of pages, they just go on Rust and say, what can we do about roof drains? Is there anything on the actual guidelines for this? And the answer comes back in 30 seconds, and you
I mean,
can.
that's huge because you think about it, you work for all these large institutions and they all have these types of guidelines. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
sort of Byzantium otherwise.
exactly.
It's really amazing.
So the first bucket is help the firm while they're making the decisions, and the second one is checking the work for them. So you work for the milestone, and you use ArchiBoost for zoning, code compliance questions, the knowledge agents, the construction details, and then you hit the 50% CD set or the 100% DD, right? And then we have agents that will independently review the project for you. So they will go and do a plan review and QA/QC. And they can look for anything from code issues, constructability issues, drawing to drawing inconsistencies, so cross-referencing information about among different disciplines, specification conflicts versus the drawings, um, even basic things like typos and abbreviations. And of course, on top of that, we have individual agents that we can layer on top specific things that the firm wants. So we have clients that they have their own standards and they say, can you check this set against my standards? Or we have a client that they're doing a lot of K-12 schools. So they say, I'm going to upload the DSA checklist. And the DSA is in California, the body of that reviews the drawings for the K-12 or the higher education buildings too. So they have a specific checklist of things, and then we can layer that on top, and it will go and look into your set for any mistakes or discrepancies.
I love it. And here's another question then. Let's say you have a really complex program document from the
Mhm.
client. Can you upload that and then check your drawing against that program document to make sure that all the elements are correctly represented?
Absolutely, yes. So the one we expect one tomorrow from one of our clients, um, and they have that's the university one. It's gonna they're gonna upload the area tabulations of all the program, and then it will go and check their requirements from the
Hmm.
university, and at the same time the plans to see if they match. So all three sources they need to match and be aligned.
Oh, that's so cool. Boy, I can just think of some times where this really would have been nice. That's pretty
Yeah, I
fantastic.
mean,
And how
I
does it work if you have a project that's like GSA or something though, and it's like you can't. Some of these things got you have to do it local. Can you have a local deployment option, or is that even come up as a requirement for any of those sort of things?
That's companies have asked about that. We're not there yet. So we are SOC 2 certified. Of course, we're hitting all the industry standards for security. Uh, but so far we haven't done. I think we've only done one government project, um, but
Mhm.
that was like experimental, and we're trying to find ways to solve this and allow our clients to give us more projects basically and help them more.
Yes, because yeah, some of those government projects can be a little bonkers. So one of the challenges I would expect when something like this is, how do you listen to a customer and kind of hear what they need versus what they're saying? And the people always talk about, if I listened to my customers was a Henry Ford, I would have built a faster horse.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, yeah, that's a pretty tired saying, but there's some truth to it. What did you hear? Did you always hear from the customers exactly what you needed to be building, or did you hear faster horse and then you reinterpret it into something that ended up being exactly what they needed versus what they thought they did?
I think the trick, there's a combination of both. There's always some truth in what the client tells you. Um, but Vasu jokes sometimes. Vasu, I never talked about Vasu. So Vasu is a CTO. He's my co-founder. He had a small stint at Meta, and then he was a founding engineer and eventually became the head of engineering at a startup called Nux AI. Uh,
Hmm.
so he's 0 to 1. He's an engineer. He has the understanding of how to scale a company like this. He's done it before with Nux. So when we sit down with them, as an architect, you talk to your client and you understand what they want and you try to please them. Vasu is not like that. Vasu is like, we need to build what we think that is appropriate for what they're saying. It doesn't mean that they always know what they want.
Yeah,
You need to give
exactly,
them
right? Yeah.
something that solves the problem. So there were times that we would, and that also came from, I guess, from my architectural background. We would do the design option that they asked for, the thing that they wanted to sell to solve, but at the same time, we would build another thing that's what we thought they need. So we would give them both and say, look, this is what you asked for, but this is what we think is going to solve your problem. Um,
Wow, that's a lot of work.
it is a lot. Well, yeah, we don't sleep basically.
Yeah, seriously, I want to see how big the coffee urn is in your office. Wow.
So yeah, and I would say the majority of the times they picked the latter, the thing that we thought that was the right thing to build and solve. Of course, those were small versions, almost like an MVP of what they wanted. Um, and then gradually we could tell from how they use the platform of what's the next step they wanted. And of course, we have weekly calls. We have power users that are really influential to this, and we owe them a lot because they've been amazing in their feedback.
That's interesting. Um, I'm thinking when I hear something like this, I'm thinking, how do you maintain or do you have plans for this in the long term? Do you have an idea of what something like this might look like? That kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to maintain this product, right? And it's like at some point, are you gonna start paring things back or anything like that?
So the way
Or are you going to continue to build? Like, what's that progression look like? And are you going to have you seen, for instance, like people not engaging with some of the things you built, and you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or is it always an additive process?
we haven't, so the three things that we kept hearing when we started the company was architects are slow adopters of software. Architects, they don't want to pay, and architects want a finished product. So those are the three, or I guess AEC users in general. And that's not our experience so far. Maybe we're super lucky, who knows? But we've seen people who are really excited about what we're building.
Hmm.
They're adopting like crazy, and they're also willing to pay. Um, and I feel that this is the reason why is because we probably built the right things that really solve a problem
So
for them.
that's the test. If they're not willing to pay, don't do it. In
Yeah, and
some
that's
ways.
so for this company also for ArchiBoost, the way we did it is we we were offered term seeds that were not 25 million, but were larger than what we've raised for our pre-seed, and we deliberately said no because we wanted to raise a small pre-seed, um, and build something within 12 months that we felt that people wanted to first use and then see the willingness to pay.
Hmm.
And once that was achieved, and we started expanding to more firms, that's when we said, okay, now it's the time to go and raise our seed round. And we just closed our round like a month ago. Um,
Yeah. So you have some real valid evidence that justifies what
yeah,
you're
because
saying.
otherwise, there's no point in raising a lot of money and just do what with it.
So right now, then, did we go back to this question of like, is there anything that you would start to deprecate or anything like this at this point? The answer is no.
The answer is
You've
no.
only built things that people are using, essentially.
Essentially, yes. I mean, of course, it wasn't perfect day one. We keep molding them and refining
Mhm.
them to adjust to the needs of the client. But I wouldn't say there was one feature that we rolled out and it never worked or we deprecated because people were not using.
I love that approach, though. I mean, it's eminently logical, but I don't think it's always followed. To be honest, this idea of like really listening to the customer and then building what they're asking for. Plus, this idea of presenting multiple options, being like, "Hey, this is what you asked for, but this is what we think you need." I mean, that's pretty exceptional of a way of going about it.
I
And
think
it's
that
like
goes back to the architecture days, right?
it's
Because
true. You're right. You never
yeah,
show the option. Well, usually though, you always kind of game it a little bit. Well, maybe we did, but you try to show the option that you want to build, in such a light that the client's like, "Oh yeah, that's great. I
yeah,
really like that."
because a lot of the times people they don't know what they want, and that's true, right?
Hmm.
Um, because sometimes the solution lies somewhere that they haven't even thought about. Because, like you said, faster horse car. Well, no
Yeah.
one thought of the car. The driver wouldn't think of the car.
So you talked about willingness to pay, and where is that willingness coming from on the part of the client? Are they You think about it, it's like, okay, are they able to take on more scope? Are they able to improve quality? Are they able to shorten time? Is it really all three of those? It sounds like it's really all three of those in some ways that ArchiBoost is. I guess maybe that explains the
I'm trying
name.
to. I'm done. Yes. Oh, really interesting side story. One of our super users, a principal in DC in one of the firms, he recently called us boosters. She emailed us like, "Hey, boosters, can we do this?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, that's actually a cool nickname. We're gonna start using this
It
for
is. I
our
mean, I'm
users in the
thinking of like
firms."
strap some rockets on this. I mean, that's kind of what it does here.
Yeah. So, excuse me. To go back to your question, um, the scope I'm not 100% sure if we're expanding for them.
Mhm.
What we definitely do is that we make them way faster. So they save a lot of time and effort for things that would take them hours. So just an example, um, find your construction detail on the platform, load it in Revit in 3 seconds. Probably the whole process took you a minute and a half. If you were to do this manually, you would have to go and talk to someone in the office, try to find whether the company ever did that detail. If even if you found that, you have to go and open an old Revit file. It takes a couple of hours to
Yeah, and someone's
migrate.
updated to a new, yeah, upgraded, like all
Yeah.
these things. Yeah.
So we save them a lot of time there, but I think where we really hit the nail in at the head is with QAQC because we are saving them so much so many mistake and rework. Like imagine we catch things that they would have never caught, not because they're bad architects, but because they're inundated and the timelines are so constrained that they don't have time to go and review every single page of the set. They would go and review the G seats for egress and they would check something. But again, we can do this so fast and in depth that we catch mistakes before they hit the actual construction because before they become RFIs or change orders.
Yeah, and that could be huge. So I'm curious. You mentioned the QA process you tried with a code, or you implemented with a code consultant. Have you done the same thing in the context of looking at RFIs and things like that, going into construction? I mean, obviously you're a young startup here. Projects take a long time, but has someone used this in the context of a project that's going into construction and maybe compared it against sort of their historical rate for RFIs and things like that versus what they had on a project where they ran ArchiBoost?
So there are two things we did. The first one is one of our competitors created a benchmark, an open source benchmark,
Hmm.
and a couple of competitors have run this. We did it recently too. We haven't publicated the results yet.
And when you say a benchmark, what it's like it's a project that everyone can access and then be able
Correct.
to. Okay.
It's a drawing set. It has specific details, specific plans, sections, elevations, specific mistakes that were done on this, and then you can load it onto your platform, check for the results, and you get a score per category.
I feel like I should know about this. Where does one find this? This is like a sort of an unusual thing. Is it on
Should
Hugging
I name
Face? Like,
should I name the competitor?
yeah, go for it. I don't know.
It's Nomic. They created this AEC benchmark.
Okay, very cool.
Um,
It's nice of them to do that.
yeah, no, that was pretty cool. So we run this. I think a couple of other competitors did, and so far we're outscoring everyone.
Mm.
Uh,
I bet they
so
regret putting that up there then. So,
I mean, it was great for the industry, so they
no,
had
for
to do
sure.
that.
It
Yeah,
improves the breed. Absolutely.
right. The second part of your question, when we do pilots with companies, what we tell them to really prove them that we provide ROI is we tell them take a project that you completed construction and you know the number of RFIs you were generated and give it to us and run it on the platform and see what we catch. Um, and everyone who has done a pilot became a client because we are catching. There was this one project we caught 70% of the RFIs, um,
Yeah,
and
and that's like, I mean, that you talk about something that has significant implications for the bottom line.
yeah.
Um,
And I mean, I
it's
want to be clear, and I keep telling that to everyone I'm talking. We are not catching everything.
no,
Anyone who says they're catching everything, they're lying.
or
uh,
they never met a contractor, but yeah.
Correct, yes. But the thing is, we're doing it way faster than manual reviews. We go way deeper, and we catch probably 6 times more issues than a manual review would catch.
It's pretty incredible. And I'm thinking about all of these ways in which you're refining the process, and as you mentioned, you're able to accelerate them. You're bringing in the knowledge of the Russ, or in my case, the Chris, or what have you, into the firm. Where do you think this has implications for the emerging professional? They used to have to go to an individual perhaps to learn some of these things. Maybe now they can go to Russ and learn things. Are you starting to see people who are starting their careers using these things as a tool to sort of develop their own learning? Because you start as an architectural intern, right, and you need to begin to understand the practice and methodology, and maybe the old timers don't always have the time in order to
Exactly.
teach you. Are people using this as a means of learning?
Yeah, so I'll give you the analogy of me as an intern or as a junior architect. I had a notebook, and I would sit in those meetings where the partners and the director would talk, and the code experts, and they would say function of space, and I didn't know what that. Take a note. What
Mm.
is occupancy? I don't know what that is. Let's take a note. I'm assembly unconcentrated. Note. And then I would go back and either go on Google or look at the PDFs and try to understand, educate myself, or I would go, and I was super lucky to have mentors that would sit down with me after hours. Let's say we work on this project with a PA, John, and we would work from 9 to 5 together. And then after 5, he would spend an hour every day to teach me about the code and about how do you put together a set and how do you draw construction details. So imagine now we are trying to democratize that because not everyone gets the same exposure to this. And by
Or
having
has sort of the mentality that likes to or feels comfortable engaging with someone to get that type of knowledge, right? They may still want the knowledge but aren't comfortable asking for an hour of someone's time at the end of the day and that sort of
No,
thing.
and I mean again, big shout out to John Kirshner, amazing guy, one of my mentors. I I learned so much from him during that 3 year period from one project. So um, yeah, going back to what I was saying, we're trying to democratize this because now you can just go and say, what is functional space? What is the occupancy? We had this conversation with an intermediate slash senior the other day where they were trying to find the maximum allowed area for their project,
Hmm.
and they asked the question, and Russ came back and gave them an answer they were not expecting. They said, no, it's 16,000 square feet. And they sent us a chat message because we have integration with all these firms. And it's like, I think Russ is wrong. And I'm like, push back, talk to him, ask him why he's saying that. And he goes back and says, no, you're wrong. It should be 64,000 square feet, blah, blah, blah. And then Russ comes back and says, well, your project can apply for both um, 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 oops, I forgot the word, but basically you get an allowance for extra square footage, and there was an exception, like I think it was exception E or something, and then he chats back and it's like, oh shit, like I didn't see that. They caught this. This is
Ooh,
amazing.
that's scary when you get to that point. It's but then again, that's what Russ used to do. He'd be the person
Exactly.
that would know
Yeah.
the exception.
Yeah. And he would shout to you, so.
Yeah, exactly. So you're
Yeah.
wrong, and I'm going to tell you why.
It's really funny because the way we have Russ talking to the people or even flagging QAQC, because what we did is that we put all these pieces of the puzzle together, right? So Russ is the agent you're going to go and ask code questions, but it's also the agent that goes into your drawing set and reviews it for code compliance. So there are tickets that are generated, and the tone is a little aggressive. And one of the principals at one of the office, he's a power user, Linda, she told us, um, I'm actually kind of intimidated by Russ, but actually I love the way he talks.
It's so
Um,
much better than most AIs, which are excessively flattering. It's like, great question, Rod. It's like Russ is like, you should already know that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there was one thing that says, I think she flagged a ticket we had, and it was like physically impossible to build this wall type the way you have it. It's like these guys scolding me. Yeah, so it was kind of funny.
I think I love that personality is honestly it's a little reflective of the profession in some ways.
Yeah,
So I think that's actually nicely appropriate.
or
So
the
you
old
don't have
guard,
too
right?
much. Yeah, exactly. The old guard for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I've got out while the old guard was still in charge, so I'm not sure what the new guard looks like. But
Right.
yeah. So here's a question I would have for you. We only have a few minutes left. But I
Mhm.
really am curious about how you manage, because this is something I think is a concern for a lot of startups, is how you manage dependence on elements of AI that are sort of outside of your control. You use other people's AI technology in conjunction with your own, right?
Right.
And when you do that, how do you manage that risk? And I'm thinking of the risk of, like, say, compute costs down the road. or that they change the models in some way that fundamentally alters your software. Do you have some advice or maybe ways and strategies that you think are effective ways of mitigating those types of challenges?
So we're building this, we're doing the combination of three different things. One is we have, of course, AI underlying models we're using from the labs. Then we have open source models that are layer on top that we are training it ourselves. And then the third
Mhm.
one is we have also algorithms that we built. So we don't just rely on the black box that AI is.
So
And
there's
that's
no one dependency that you have then.
no, no, it's a
And do you think
combination of
everyone
things.
should be thinking that way?
I cannot dictate to other people what they should do, but I think
But I
that's the
mean, it seems a
responsible
certain
way to
amount
do
of
it.
prudence, right? Yeah.
It's the responsible way to do it. We like to call our type of AI responsible AI because it's a high stake environment, and mistakes will cost a lot of money and even like lives if you make a mistake for code and fire life safety. So we are taking an approach where we sat down with Vast and created deterministic rules for checks that we're doing, and then AI is helping us retrieve the code and review the checks we've already done with our algorithms.
So this is pretty compelling, and I have to ask, when you look at, and maybe you can don't want to share this, but when I hear what you're describing and some of the challenges that you tell people, it's like, hey, run, your old document set, and do an RFI check on that versus, and then you compare it to what actually happened, see what's caught. Those types of sales pitches sound like, whew, pretty powerful. It basically the software proves itself. Have you had situations where people have tried ArchiBoost and are like, not for us? Or has this been something where almost everyone that has used it has seen value?
There was one company that tried it and didn't become a client, and it was, I think, our fault because the way we did it is we didn't charge them for the set that they loaded on the platform. And so the way it works is that you upload a drawing set and we give you 50% discount on the first set.
Mhm.
So you can try it. The one company we didn't charge, and it was one of the first pilots we did, they didn't pay, so they didn't feel obliged to go back and review the results. So we kept bugging them to, can you review? Can you review? Can you review? They didn't, and they didn't become a client.
So there's something to be said for having some skin in the game.
Yeah, because I think that people are so busy that if they don't pay to check something, if it works, they won't bother, and then you'll end up seeing what we saw. I think.
Yeah. And I also would ask too, it's like from your opinion, is there any firm that doesn't really need the technology that ArchiBoost offers? Like, is there something where you're like, it's kind of like, what's fascinating here is it doesn't hit on, like I say, one vein. Rather, you're cutting across different firm size. You're cutting across different stages of design. It's kind of like, it's almost hard to imagine. It's like going to the Cheesecake Factory. Like you're going to find something on the menu that you want to eat. Like,
Yeah, and
have you?
we have companies that they adopt the whole platform. We have companies that they are using only QAQC. We have companies that they are using everything except for detail library. We have one company that's
Oh,
only
it's
using the
interesting.
detail
And
library.
can you actually buy that? Can you buy one
Yeah, yeah.
capability? Oh, interesting.
Because there are other companies that they do some of the features that we have.
Mhm.
Um, so there is a big one that does a detail library. So we have a client that is using everything except for the detail library because they're using that company's detail library. And I think they only had a contract with them for 2 years, maybe. So I don't know.
And do you
Um,
see that model being successful in the long term, where people can buy a la carte, or do you ever have a plan of shifting to something where it's sort of a more single model, and then either you use it or you don't, but it's
Ideally,
up
you
to you.
use the whole platform, and I think people start understanding this, and that's how all of our latest clients they bought the whole platform. Um, we kept hearing from people the terms software fatigue. So why should I have five different subscriptions to five different tools? Can I buy
Yeah.
one that has everything? Actually, there was one client that they told us they bought the platform. And they said, "Can you also do renderings?" And I'm like, "No, no, we don't want to get there." So, yeah,
That's funny. Yeah, I could definitely see that, and it certainly is part of the workflow. Well, we have a great SDK, so let's talk. So here's another question I would ask for you, and we're almost out of time here, but in the context of a software company that is thinking about like what's next, do you feel that we're in a situation where we may actually be starting to go back to where you started with Pantheon And do you feel like in some ways now you're doing a really good QA, QC process, review process, sort of this design assistance? Um, and do you think at some point you're going to go back to the Pantheon model of combining this type of review with an automated design generation process? Because it's starting to feel like in some ways it's ready to become a loop, at least at some point in the future.
We So right now we are at the phase what I call understand phase.
Mhm.
So we can reduce the design and the coordination errors. We have the second phase that we're shooting for, which is what I call the reason phase. So can I predict and manage costs? Can I anticipate and mitigate owner changes of scope? Can I predict the project outcomes? Imagine you are working on your project and you move a wall 10 feet to the right, and then you get a pop-up message that says, this is going to cost you 6 months of permit delays, and it's going to cost you another 200K of extra cost in
Oh, I mean,
materials or in
that
rework.
sounds awesome. Yeah.
And it's not just code compliance pop-ups. It's about everything because we have all the information for you. We have again the client standards, the firm standards, the codes, the municipalities. We have
Yeah, I
everything
mean,
in there.
but would this be something where it would like literally like as you move it, it would create like a draft version of the documentation set that then it would also inspect for RFIs. So it's like literally you can do like the whole thing through, be like,
That's
oh, if
that's
you do this, it
that's the goal. We don't want to get to the point where we
but that's
generate
a
the design.
huge amount of computation, isn't it?
It is crazy, yes. That's why it's a holy grail. That's
Yeah.
what we're shooting for. We don't want to replace the professionals. We don't want to get to the point where we say we'll steal the design from you. I think the one thing I learned from Pantheon is because we were the AI native architecture firm, it made sense to generate things for you. But every time we asked someone during those interviews, do you want us to automate design? They said no. I went to school to design, and I ended up being in the profession in drawing construction details or checking for occupancy load factors.
Yeah.
So
Still design, just not what you thought you would be doing.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. But I think we want to leave the magic to the people that they are trained for this, and then help them with everything else, all the
Do you
tedious and
think
creative
that's going
stuff.
to be the case across all strata of architecture? Do you think that there'll be an element of architecture ultimately that may evolve where there isn't as much human involvement, and then there's other areas, maybe the more boutique or the sort of the more craft architecture, where you have a very high level of human involvement?
I would think that 90% of architecture is automatable.
I mean, that's the thing,
So
like a data center. It's like,
yes, I
yeah,
was I was heading there. So data
yeah,
centers, like I mean hospitals, even multifamily residential buildings, right? If you see the really big names that do multifamily, they have specific units and they've crafted and refined their
yeah. The lobby may have a lot of touch and may have
right.
a lot of care put into it, but then,
So
well,
I think we're heading at a point where there will be areas of your design that will be automated, and of course there will be types of projects like the super high-end residential single family homes that they will not be automated
yeah,
because
the
they're
stuff you
super
see in the
tailored.
magazines. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waters.
Wow. If we'd all be so lucky to have one of those. Unfortunately, I live in a box with windows, but it's a nice box, so not going to complain. Georgios, this has been a great conversation. I was telling earlier at the beginning, I was hoping we would make it shorter because I know people don't always have an hour to listen. I was not very good at that. This was too
We failed.
fascinating to cut short. Yeah. So this is really fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, no, thanks, Max, for having me. And it's great to talk to people who they put together podcasts like that, but they are also industry insiders and they understand because they've been there. So loved it.
Yeah, I've been there, and yeah, I mean, there's been some horror stories. Like I said, I mentioned, like, program doc. We had one that had 18,000 line items in it. It's like
Fun
it's
times.
not an easy task. So what's next? Where should someone go if they want to learn more on something like this?
They can go to our website. It's AI. If they're potential clients, they can book a demo and we can show them live what we do. If they were just gonna spend some time on the website, they can also do that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. Vasu is on LinkedIn. They can also message us, and we can take it from there.
It sounds fantastic. Well, like again,
We're
thank you
also
for
going
your
to be at
time. I
the
know you're busy, so
we're also going to be at all those universities. So if anyone is there, stop by our booth.
that's right. Chaos will be there too, and you should stop by our booth. I'll stop by
Yeah, yeah,
yours.
we'll do that. Yes, meet in person.
Excellent.
Thanks so much,
All right,
Roderick.
great. Well, absolutely my pleasure. Take care.
You too. Bye.